The night wind swept across the empty parking lot, carrying the chill of early winter. Dim yellow streetlights spilled uneven patches of light on the ground, stretching the shadows of cars into long, tangled shapes like a maze. Eliza pulled her thin coat tighter around herself, her fingers brushing the car key. She had just finished her last shift at the restaurant. Her feet ached, her wrists were red where the apron ties had rubbed. The scent of wine and dish soap still clung faintly to her. Everyone else had gone home. Only her footsteps echoed in the hollow stillness. Clink. The small sound of her key dropping onto the concrete made her flinch. Eliza bent down quickly, heart hammering. When she straightened, she froze. Marcus. He stood about 30 feet away, half hidden in shadow. The light swept across his face for a fleeting second, before fading again. Once that face had meant safety. Now it meant danger. Hello, Eliza. His voice was low and deliberate, each word dragging through the air, meant to crush her composure. Eliza went rigid, her breath caught. She stepped back. Don't, Marcus, don't come near me. He stepped out of the dark black coat dampened by fine drizzle. His eyes drifted over her face, down to her neck, where the faint scar still lingered. You think you can run forever? We're over, she whispered. There is no over, Eliza. You're mine. She shook her head, her voice trembling. I warned you. There's a restraining order. You can't. Marcus laughed, a cold, sharp laugh that echoed through the empty lot. A restraining order? You think a piece of paper scares me. You forget who I know? Eliza turned and ran. Her heels struck the concrete, the sound ricocheting off the silence. Her breath came in ragged bursts, every exhale tinged with fear. She didn't look back. She could hear Marcus's heavy footsteps gaining. Stop, Eliza! His shout ripped through the night, wild with fury. She didn't stop. She knew if she did, Marcus wouldn't just hurt her. He would kill her. The parking lot stretched ahead, scattered with only a few cars. In the farthest corner, under a flickering light, a man sat alone on a low wall. A laptop glowed on his lap, its screen illuminating his face. Sharp, calm, focused. In a split second, Eliza bolted toward him. The man looked up, startled as she ran closer, eyes wide with panic. She gasped out the words between breaths. Please, help me! Just pretend you know me! Before he could respond, she dropped to her knees beside him, clutching his arm with both hands, curling into him as though they were together. Her body trembled, her heartbeat thundered. Tears spilled freely. For a second, the man hesitated. Then his expression shifted. He placed a steady hand on her back, voice low and calm near her ear. Play along, he murmured. I've got you. Eliza could feel the strong, steady rhythm of his heartbeat through his shirt, solid, grounding, like an anchor in the storm inside her. Marcus appeared panting, rage simmering beneath his breath. Let go of him, Eliza! What the hell do you think you're doing? The man stood slowly. The light caught his face. Gabriel Reed, young CEO of Reed Hospitality. His photo had graced the cover of Forbes UK. His eyes were cold, dangerous. Excuse me, Gabriel said evenly, voice firm with authority. You're interrupting my evening with my girlfriend. Marcus blinked. You're what? Gabriel slid an arm around Eliza's waist, drawing her close until her head rested on his shoulder. She's with me, he said, each word deliberate, clear. And I don't appreciate strangers yelling at her. She's my wife, Marcus shouted. Really? Gabriel arched a brow, the faintest edge of a smirk cutting across his face. Funny. She doesn't seem to agree. His gaze flicked to Eliza, a subtle nod, a silent question. You okay? Her answer came as a whisper so faint only he could hear. Please, don't let him take me. Gabriel rose fully, still keeping Eliza behind him, shielding her with his body. Sir, he said in the controlled tone of a man accustomed to command, you have 3 seconds to walk away before I call the police. 1. Marcus's fist tightened. He took a step forward. 2. Gabriel's voice dropped lower, sharp as ice. He stopped. For a brief moment, Marcus hesitated, because he saw in Gabriel's eyes a kind of calm that couldn't be intimidated. Grinding his teeth, Marcus pointed at Eliza. This isn't over. Gabriel's reply was quiet but final. It already is. Marcus backed away, then turned and disappeared into the dark. The moment he was gone, all strength drained from Eliza's body. She nearly collapsed, but Gabriel caught her. Easy, he said softly, his voice gentling. You're safe now. Parking lot security began to approach, but Gabriel raised a hand. It's fine. I'll handle this. He guided her toward a gray car parked nearby, opened the door for her, and helped her inside. Then he circled around to the driver's seat. When the doors shut, the world outside fell away. Rain began to patter against the windshield. Eliza trembled, clasping her hands together. Gabriel started the engine in silence, then handed her a tissue without a word. The car rolled out of the parking lot, its tires whispering softly against the rain-soaked pavement. Steady, rhythmic, almost lulling. Eliza sat in the passenger seat, hands clasped tightly in her lap, her breath short and uneven. Her skin was cold, her wet hair clinging to her neck. The air inside the car was thick with the scent of rain, fear, and something fragile that refused to fade. Gabriel glanced at her once through the rearview mirror. He didn't speak. He simply reached behind him, took his coat from the back seat, and draped it over her shoulders. His hand brushed her lightly. Not invasive, just enough for her to feel a quiet warmth, something real, grounding, safe. Breathe, he said softly, eyes fixed on the road stretching through the rain. You're safe now. His voice was low and calm, like a slow piano tune drifting through an empty bar. Eliza closed her eyes, tried to inhale, but her chest still trembled. She clutched the edge of his coat, unsure what or whom to trust anymore. When the car stopped, they were in the city center. Neon lights painted the sidewalks in shades of pink and violet. A convenience store glowed white against the night. Gabriel stepped out, opened her door, and held out his hand. Come on, let's get you something warm to drink. She hesitated, then placed her hand in his. His palm was large, warm, steady. Inside the store, he picked up a bottle of water, a pack of tissues, and a cup of hot cocoa. Here, he said, setting the cup in front of her as they sat by the window. Are you hurt? Eliza shook her head. No, just scared. He nodded slightly, his eyes calm, almost disarmingly composed. He's your ex-husband? She froze for a moment, then nodded, her voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid of the words themselves. Gabriel didn't ask more. He simply rested his elbow on the table and listened. She told him about being trapped inside a beautiful house that felt more like a gilded cage for 2 years. About all the times she'd packed her bag but never made it out. About Marcus's eyes, how soft they could seem, and how sharp they could turn. Every time I packed a bag, she said hoarsely, he'd find me. He always found me. Rain thickened outside, droplets running down the glass in long, trembling streaks. The streetlights blurred, and her reflection seemed to dissolve between light and shadow. Gabriel didn't interrupt. He didn't pry, didn't pity. He just listened, and somehow his silence didn't feel heavy. It felt safe. After a long pause, Eliza lowered her head. I'm sorry for all this, for dragging you into my mess. Gabriel shook his head. Don't apologize. You did the right thing. She looked up at him, surprised. He went on, voice low but firm. You ran toward help. That takes courage. Most people freeze or hide. You chose to fight, even if it meant trusting a stranger. His words broke something open inside her. Not fear, recognition. Tears filled her eyes again, but this time they fell softly, almost in relief. Gabriel handed her a tissue and waited until her breathing returned to normal. When the clock neared midnight, he rose. Where do you live? Not far, she murmured. I can walk. He glanced toward the window. Rain still falling, wind sweeping wet leaves across the sidewalk. I'll drive you. She started to protest, but something in his gaze silenced her. In the car, neither spoke, only the steady rhythm of the wipers and the rain outside. Gabriel stopped in front of a small apartment building at the end of the street. She unbuckled her seatbelt, her voice quiet. I don't even know your name. Gabriel Reed, he said, reaching into the glove compartment and pulling out a business card. Reed Hospitality Group. He hesitated for a moment before handing it to her. If he comes again, call me, day or night. Eliza looked down at the card. Thick paper, silver edges, his name printed in bold beneath the glow of the dashboard lights. Why are you helping me? She asked. He was silent for a few seconds, then answered softly, because someone should have helped you long before tonight. Gabriel gave a small nod, then drove off. The headlights faded into the rain. Eliza stood alone beneath the awning, her hand clutching the business card. The name Gabriel Reed gleamed faintly through the drizzle, like a promise left unspoken. Raindrops slid down her hair, traced her cheek, cool but strangely peaceful. For the first time in a very long while, she wasn't afraid of the rain anymore. Morning light slipped through the old curtains, drawing fine thread-like lines on the wall. Eliza opened her eyes after a restless sleep, where every sound in the hallway had made her heart tighten. The tiny room had only 4 walls, a worn mattress, and a window facing the gray brick wall of the adjacent building. Nothing but cold air, and the ticking of a wall clock counting the time she'd been hiding. She sat up, clutching the blanket. Her breath was still uneven, her heart still trapped in last night's nightmare. Marcus yelling, his hands slamming against the car window, his eyes filled with threat. She reached for her phone. The screen lit up in the dim dawn. A message. Unknown number. This is Gabriel Reed. Are you okay? She stared at the words for a long moment. Short, polite, yet something in them tightened her chest. Not fear, but the fragile feeling of being remembered. She typed, I'm fine. Thank you for last night. Almost immediately another text arrived. Can we meet? I might have an idea to help you stay safe. Eliza hesitated. A part of her wanted to say no, to refuse anything that could hurt her again. But another part, smaller yet more honest, wanted to believe. She replied, where? Reed Lounge, 10 a.m. She exhaled slowly. Reed Lounge, an upscale cafe on the ground floor of the Reed Grand Hotel, a place only the wealthy frequented. She checked the clock. 8:37. Less than an hour to look, like a normal person. The revolving glass doors of Reed Lounge closed behind her, shutting out the dusty world outside. Inside felt like another universe. The scent of roasted coffee, warm golden light, distant piano music. The staff moved softly, their voices low, suits perfectly pressed. Eliza walked in wearing a simple sweater and faded jeans. She knew she didn't belong, like someone who once had a place in this world, but was now standing at its edge, afraid to touch it again. Gabriel was already seated by the window. Morning light brushed across his face, sharp, alert, untouched by last night's storm. When he saw her, he rose, signaling to the waiter. Eliza, his voice was low but warm. You came. She nodded and sat down carefully, still gripping the strap of her bag like a shield. Gabriel studied her, not with judgment, but as someone calculating how best to help. Did he come near you again? She shook her head. Not yet. Good, he said, then paused for a few seconds. I've been thinking. You can't keep hiding in that restaurant forever. You need a place where he can't find you, and people who can protect you. Eliza's hand tightened slightly. I can't ask for more help. You've done enough. Gabriel tilted his head. This isn't charity, Eliza. It's practicality. I own hotels with security cameras and private access. If you work for me, you can live in one of them. No one gets in without clearance. She looked up, startled. Work for you? Reed Grand, marketing department. Eliza let out a small, shaky laugh. I used to be in marketing. Before everything. I know. His eyes met hers. I looked you up. She froze. You what? I needed to know who I was helping. His tone stayed calm. Your record's impressive. Campaigns that shifted the market. You were one of the best. She turned away, her voice trembling. Was. Gabriel leaned back, his gaze softening. You still are. You just forgot. Silence stretched between them. The quiet drip of coffee filled the space. Eliza looked at him, half wary, half grateful. Why me, Gabriel? Why help a stranger? He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower in tone. Because once I wasn't fast enough. She frowned. He looked out the window, voice roughening. My sister, years ago, her husband used to hit her, control her. One night she called me, but I didn't pick up. I was in a meeting. By the time I got there, she was gone. Eliza's breath caught. She survived, he went on, his eyes clouded by memory, but she never trusted anyone again. And that's on me. He turned back to her, gaze clear and steady. So when I see someone like her, someone like you, I don't ignore it. Eliza said nothing. Tears welled up, hot against the cold morning. Not out of pity, but because, for the first time, someone truly understood what it felt like to live without daring to live. Gabriel pulled a fresh business card from his pocket and set it before her. HR department. Ask for me. You'll have a job by Monday, and a room key by evening. She looked at the card, silver-edged, embossed with the Reed Grand logo, his name printed beneath in the small, precise letters. Chief Executive Officer. Her voice shook. I don't know if I can trust myself to start again. He smiled faintly, without trying to comfort. You don't have to trust yourself yet. Just trust the chance. In that moment, every sound seemed to slow. The clink of spoons against glass, the first drops of rain outside, the scent of coffee drifting through the air. A new world, fragile but real, was unfolding before her. Eliza nodded softly. Okay. Gabriel stood, paid the bill, and inclined his head toward her. I'll have someone call you later with the details. He paused at the doorway, his voice dropping. And Eliza, if he ever comes near you again, call me. Day or night. The door closed behind him. Outside, the rain grew heavier. Eliza sat still, staring at the business card under the golden light. The name Gabriel Reed shimmered like a promise, or perhaps the small flame just lit in her life, in the middle of a rain that hadn't yet stopped. The next morning dawned clear, the first blue sky after days of rain. Thin rays of sunlight stretched across the damp street, glinting off puddles like fragments of soft gold. Eliza stood by the window of her small apartment, a cup of cold coffee in hand, watching a silver-gray SUV pull up outside the building. The car door opened, and Gabriel Reed stepped out. Dark jeans, rolled-up sleeves, 2 coffee cups, and a paper bag in hand. He didn't carry the polished aura of a magazine CEO, but rather a simple ease that made people feel at ease. Morning, he said, a quick smile flickering across his face like sunlight sliding across glass. Morning, she replied, her voice still shy. Gabriel handed her a cup. Fuel for moving day. You'll need it. The warmth of the coffee spread through her fingers, melting a bit of the cold inside her chest. Eliza looked around the old apartment, where she had once curled up against the wall every time footsteps echoed in the hallway, where she had barricaded the door each night, afraid he would find her. Now it was just 4 empty walls. Is that all? Gabriel asked, eyeing the neat stack of boxes. Pretty much, Eliza said with a faint smile. Turns out you can fit an entire life into 3 boxes. He didn't smile back. His gaze swept across the scratched floorboards, the scuffed paint where she had once leaned and cried. Then let's start a new one somewhere better. Reed Residences stood in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood, just 10 minutes from downtown. The sign was discreetly engraved in stone. The iron gate opened with a key card. Inside, the lobby gleamed with light-colored stone and the faint scent of wood and lavender. Eliza looked around, her chest tightening slightly. She wasn't used to this kind of peaceful luxury. Gabriel led her to the front desk, where a broad-shouldered man stood on duty. Frank Morrison, Gabriel introduced, building manager and head of security. Frank offered his hand with a friendly smile. Miss Rodriguez, welcome. I live on site. Key card access after 6 p.m. Cameras on every entrance. No visitor gets in without your permission. Eliza shook his hand, murmuring a quiet thank you, barely audible. They continued to the 3rd floor. At the end of the hallway, a woman waited, hair neatly tied back, eyes sharp, posture disciplined, like someone shaped by years of command. Patricia Chin, Gabriel said, head of security for all Reed properties, former military. Patricia gave a firm nod. Mr. Reed briefed me about your situation. Don't worry, ma'am. If that man comes within 100 yards of this building, We'll know before he does." Her voice carried no doubt, no room for fear. Eliza felt as though she'd been wrapped in invisible armor. Gabriel smiled lightly. "See? Told you we'd take security seriously." She nodded, her throat tight. What swelled inside her wasn't just safety, it was the fragile, foreign feeling of being worth protecting. The apartment door opened. Light poured in. The place was small but beautiful. Ivory-painted walls, pale wood floors, a large window overlooking a park, soft curtains shifting gently with the breeze. A small kitchen connected to the living area features a simple wooden table and gray velvet chairs. On the counter sat a small vase of lavender. Eliza stood still for a long moment, breathing in. The air smelled of sunlight and quiet, the kind of peace she'd forgotten existed. Gabriel stood behind her, hands in his pockets, voice low. "The previous tenant moved out last month. She left some furniture. I thought it might make the place feel less empty." "Less empty," she repeated with a faint laugh. "It feels unreal." He tilted his head slightly. "Unreal can be good." Silence lingered, only the sound of the curtains rustling and two heartbeats in the stillness between them. Then Eliza turned to face him. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Would you still help me if I weren't me?" He frowned. "Meaning, if I weren't the woman you found that night?" "If I didn't," she hesitated, her lips trembling. "If I didn't seem pitiful." Gabriel didn't answer right away. He stepped closer, stopping half a step away, close enough for the golden light to catch in his eyes. Warm yet sharp, like a beacon cutting through fog. "Yes," he said slowly, "I'd still help you. But I won't lie." He paused, his tone deepening. "I do find you beautiful. But that's not why I'm here." The words were simple, but they cracked through the air like an electric current. Eliza looked at him, and in his gaze there was no desire, only sincerity so raw it made her chest tighten. She turned away before the tears could fall. "Thank you," she whispered. He replied, "You don't need to thank me. Just live." The afternoon passed in the soft rhythm of unpacking, paper rustling, furniture shifting, quiet laughter when their hands brushed. Gabriel helped her hang curtains, check the locks, install the door camera. He worked carefully, wordlessly, never commanding, just steady and precise, until everything was right. When the sun dipped behind the trees, he stood at the door and smiled. "I'll let you settle in. Call me if anything feels off, or even if it doesn't." Eliza walked him to the hallway. "Gabriel," she called softly. He turned back. "I don't know what I did to deserve this." "Maybe," he said, his voice gentle as breath. "You just survived long enough to earn another beginning." The door closed, leaving a quiet warmth behind. That night, Eliza unpacked the last few things from her suitcase. In the fridge, Gabriel had left a few essentials: eggs, butter, bread, and a small box with a note. "For your first dinner here." She switched on the kitchen light. Golden light filled the apartment, glinting off her trembling hands. For the first time in 2 years, she cooked, not to please or placate anyone, not out of fear, but simply to fill the air with the scent of life again. The soft rhythm of the knife against the board, the gentle sizzle of butter in the pan, the aroma of onions rising. Small sounds, yet they echoed inside her, like the opening notes of a new song. She ate alone at the wooden table, looking out the window. The city shimmered in the distance. The wind brushed the curtains. In that quiet moment, Eliza realized she was smiling. Not because she wasn't afraid anymore, but because for the first time in a very long while, she felt safe in her own breath. The first morning at the Reed Grand Hotel, sunlight streamed through the high glass panels, casting golden reflections across the elegant lobby. Eliza stood in the middle of it all, holding her new employee badge. The small print read, "Marketing Department, Reed Hospitality Group." Her hand trembled slightly. After 2 years of running and hiding, she was finally doing what she had once loved again: crafting ideas, telling stories, creating emotions that reach people. The man who greeted her on the 14th floor was Kenji Tanaka, head of marketing for the European region. He wore a crisp white shirt, a tablet in one hand, and a friendly smile on his face. Eliza Rodriguez, right? Welcome to Reed Grand. Mr. Reed mentioned you used to lead major campaigns in retail branding. Impressive background. Used to, she replied softly, half joking, half true. Kenji tilted his head, voice gentle but firm. Once you're good at storytelling, you never lose it. You just pause the story. That line made her smile. The marketing department at Reed Grand was an entirely different world from anywhere she had worked before. No shouting, no pointless meetings. People exchanged ideas with words like good thought or let's test it. It was an open, bright space filled with framed posters from international campaigns, luxury travel ads, elegant promotional clips, and the quiet hum of creativity. Kenji led her around the room, introducing everyone. This is Bridget, our digital manager, queen of memes and deadlines. And this is the content team. The reason I believe caffeine is humanity's salvation. The whole room laughed. Bridget, a red-haired woman with bright eyes, spun her chair around. Nice to meet you. Welcome to chaos. The warmth and ease of it all made Eliza blink back emotion. She had thought she would never work in a place that felt both safe and respectful again. At noon, while she was discussing her first concept, the autumn campaign for the Reed Hotel Network, the glass doors of the office opened. Everyone looked up. Gabriel walked in. No announcement, no fanfare. He wore a navy suit, the collar slightly open, eyes calm and clear. Don't mind me, he said in a low, even tone. Just checking how my favorite department's doing. Kenji grinned. We're good as long as you don't approve another impossible deadline. Gabriel smiled faintly, his gaze sweeping across the room, and then stopping on Eliza. Only for a few seconds, but enough to make her forget to breathe. His eyes didn't carry the usual distance of a boss toward an employee. They carried the quiet recognition of someone who had once pulled her out of the dark and now watched her walk into the light on her own. Glad to see you settling in, he said with a small smile, before turning away. That afternoon, the team gathered for a brainstorming session on the Autumn at Reed campaign. Kenji turned to her. You worked with a travel brand before, right? Any ideas for how to capture the emotion of fall? Eliza hesitated, then spoke slowly. People don't buy hotels. They buy the feeling of reconnecting with themselves. If the video starts with a woman opening her curtains in the morning, sunlight streaming in, the soundtrack just whined and the whistle of a kettle, the audience won't just want a vacation, they'll want a new beginning. The room fell silent for a moment, then Kenji clapped once. Brilliant. Bridget grinned. You've been here one day and already stole the show. Eliza blushed, her heart pounding. It had been so long since she felt this worth, not because someone pitied her, but because she was good enough. Deserving. By late afternoon, as people packed up their desks, Bridget nudged her shoulder. You know what's funny? The boss only drops by the marketing floor twice a month, but today makes it the third time in 1 week. Eliza frowned. He probably just checks on projects. Bridget tilted her head, smirking. Or maybe he's just checking on you. Eliza's cheeks flushed. She tried to hide behind her laptop screen. He's just kind. Sure, Bridget said, emphasizing each word. Kind and devastatingly handsome. Deadly combination. They both laughed. That night, the city glittered outside her new apartment. The air smelled faintly of lavender, the space warm like a familiar embrace. Eliza opened her laptop and reviewed the concept file she'd just finished. Taglines, visuals, and the quiet belief that she could still create something beautiful. Her phone buzzed. A message. Gabriel, how's your first day? She hesitated, then typed, It feels like a dream. His reply came almost instantly. Then don't wake up just yet. Eliza leaned back in her chair, looking out the window. City lights reflected in her damp eyes. She smiled softly. This dream wasn't about luxury, nor about the powerful man who owned the empire. It was the dream of a woman who had once been afraid, and now dared to believe she could rewrite her life. And though she didn't say it out loud, she knew the one who helped her press record again was Gabriel Reed, the man behind the empire. Gabriel's penthouse sat on the 47th floor of Reed Grand Tower, where the city lights below shimmered like a galaxy scattered across glass. When the elevator doors slid open, Eliza found herself before a frosted glass entrance. Her fingers tightened around her small purse, half nerves, half something unnamably new. The door opened automatically. The faint scent of wood and red wine lingered in the air. Gabriel was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, a pan in one hand, moving with calm precision beneath the golden glow of the room. "I thought you'd order takeout," Eliza said, trying to hide a shy smile. Gabriel tilted his head, that small, knowing smile playing at his lips. "And missed the chance to cook for my favorite strategist?" "Not a chance." He set the spoon down and gestured toward the table by the window. "Wine? White or red?" "White," she said. "Good choice." The atmosphere in the penthouse felt strange, but in a comforting way. Not quite business, not quite a date. It was something gentler. Like two people too tired to pretend, just wanting to exist in the same space without needing to fill it with words. When he placed the last dish on the table, creamy mushroom pasta with seared salmon, Eliza couldn't help smiling. "I didn't know CEOs could cook." Gabriel shrugged. "When you spend your teenage years in boarding schools, you either learn to cook or starve." They both laughed. Between sips of wine, their laughter softened into stories, small, unguarded fragments of who they were. Gabriel spoke of his childhood in a house where dinner was more a matter of negotiation than nourishment. A father who said only, "Success first, feelings later." He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. Eliza told him about her mother, a woman who smiled through silence, who mistook endurance for love. "Maybe that's why I stayed too long," she said softly. "I thought love was supposed to hurt before it felt safe." Gabriel went quiet. His gaze gentled. "I think love's supposed to make you stop running," he said at last, his voice low and steady. "Don't make you hide." After dinner, they moved to the sofa by the window. The city glittered beneath them, an inverted ocean of stars. Gabriel poured her another glass of wine. Eliza turned the stem of her glass in her hand, her fingers trembling slightly. "I like you," she confessed, voice small, trembling, "but I'm scared to trust anyone again." He watched her for a long moment. No rush, no pressure. "Then don't trust anyone," he said quietly. "Just trust me. To go slow." Silence filled the room, gentle, charged, waiting. Then he reached out and brushed a loose strand of hair from her cheek. His touch was warm, steady, asking nothing but permission. She didn't flinch. She nodded, barely. When he leaned in, their lips met, slow, deep, fragile. Not a kiss of hunger, but of recognition, of two hearts that had been broken, learning hesitantly to beat again. It wasn't passion that burned, it was peace that healed. A promise, unspoken, that neither of them would face the dark alone anymore. When she finally stood to leave, Gabriel walked her to the elevator. "Thank you for dinner," she said, her voice still carrying traces of that quiet smile. "Thank you for coming," he replied, his tone soft as the light behind him. The elevator doors slid shut, and for a brief second, in the reflection of the glass, Eliza saw herself. Not the frightened woman from the shadows, but someone stepping at last into the light. Her phone buzzed as she reached the ground floor. "Gabriel, text me when you're home safe." She smiled and typed, "Home safe." Upstairs, Gabriel watched her message appear on his screen. He typed back, two simple words, "Good night." Outside, misty rain drifted across the glass walls, scattering the city lights into gold. In that quiet moment, a man realized he had found something he didn't know he'd lost, and a woman rediscovered what it meant to trust the world again. Friday night. The Reed Grand Hotel glowed like a jewel in the heart of the city. The ground floor was packed with guests for the launch of the winter campaign, organized by the marketing department. The first project Eliza had helped lead since returning to her profession. Soft music played, wine glimmered in crystal glasses, and the large screen displayed the visuals she and Kenji had spent weeks creating. Candlelight, morning mist, and the tagline "Reed Grand," where stories begin again. Eliza stood backstage, tablet in hand, checking the slides. Her heart beat fast, not from fear, but from pride. For the first time, she felt alive again in the world she once belonged to, until her eyes caught sight of him. Marcus. He stood near the entrance, among the VIP guests, wearing a flawless black suit. The chandelier light gleamed across his face, the same charming smile, the same confident posture. Only his eyes hadn't changed. Cold, dark, just like the night she first ran away. Eliza's heartbeat stopped. Her breath caught. The entire world shrank until there was only that man. The one she once called her husband. The one who had turned love into a prison. She stepped back, the tablet slipping from her hand. The sound was soft but loud enough to make Kenji turn. "Eliza? What's wrong?" She couldn't speak, only whispered, "He's here." Kenji glanced toward the entrance, his face tightening. "Go to the back." Now. She ran. Down the hallway, pushing through the kitchen doors where staff were preparing wine trays. The air was hot, the lights harsh white, knives clattering against pans, but everything blurred in her panic. Then the back door opened. Gabriel walked in. He had just left a meeting upstairs when Kenji's urgent call came. "She's not safe. He's here." The moment Gabriel saw Marcus, he understood. The man's stance, his gaze. The kind of man who commanded, possessed, and destroyed. Gabriel walked into the center of the lobby, his steps steady, his voice low but clear. "Mr. Hale, this is a private event." Marcus turned, smiling thinly. "Private? I'm just here to see my wife." "Your ex-wife," Gabriel corrected, calm as glass. Marcus sneered. "You think you can hide behind your rich boyfriend, Eliza?" His voice cut through the air, drawing curious stares from nearby guests. Eliza stood behind the glass door, trembling. Gabriel didn't move, didn't shout. He simply took one step forward, placing himself between Marcus and the door where she hid. The chandelier light caught his face, reflecting off his eyes, cold as steel. "Mr. Hale," he said slowly, "you're trespassing, and you're disturbing my staff." Marcus narrowed his eyes. "Staff? Is that what she is to you now? Some charity project?" Gabriel's reply was so low that people had to hold their breath to hear it. "She's someone who deserves peace, something you apparently can't give." Security guards arrived. Marcus jerked away, pointing a finger at him. "You'll regret crossing me, Reed." Gabriel stepped closer, his voice sharp and cold. "If you ever come near her again, I'll make sure you're the one who regrets it." Their eyes locked, madness on one side, unshakable calm on the other. At last, Marcus was dragged out of the hotel, the echo of his shoes fading down the marble floor until there was only silence. When everything finally settled, Gabriel went to the staff room behind the event hall. Eliza sat on a chair, pale, hands tightly clasped. He knelt down in front of her, meeting her eyes. "Hey," his voice softened. "Are you okay?" She shook her head, lips trembling. "No, but I feel safer when you're here." He watched her for a long moment. In the dim light, her tear-streaked face looked fragile, yet fiercely alive. Gabriel lifted a hand, brushing her cheek lightly, as if wiping away the last trace of fear. "Then I'll stay," he said. That night he took her home. No words wasted, only a quiet command to the security guard. "No one in or out without my permission tonight." Inside the small apartment, Eliza sat curled on the sofa, eyes heavy with exhaustion and fear. Gabriel made tea and placed the cup in front of her. She looked up, her voice hoarse. "He'll never stop, will he?" Gabriel met her gaze. "Then I won't either." Silence filled the space, only the whisper of wind outside and the faint steam rising between them. When Eliza finally looked up, their eyes met. There was no longer a line between gratitude and longing. Only two people, both scarred, both searching for warmth in a world too cold. Gabriel leaned closer, pressing his lips gently against hers. A kiss soft and careful, as if he feared she might break. Eliza responded, not out of desire, but because, for the first time, she felt chosen, not possessed. Outside, snow began to fall. Inside the little apartment, the warm light glowed softly against the wall, wrapping around them in quiet peace, as if, at last, the world had stopped chasing them. Soft morning light spilled through thin curtains, painting pale gold streaks across the wall. Eliza opened her eyes, her breath still carrying the faint scent of chamomile tea and the echoes of the night before. A night when she had cried, trembled, and finally fallen asleep in Gabriel's arms. He had stayed beside her the entire time. He was still there. Across from her on the sofa, he slept sitting up, shirt wrinkled, head tilted to one side. Sunlight touched the bridge of his nose and the shadow of his lashes. In that moment, he wasn't the composed CEO of Reed Grand. He was just a man, one who had stayed awake to guard the sleep of a woman who had forgotten what safety felt like. Eliza sat up quietly and pulled the blanket higher to cover him. The soft rustle stirred Gabriel awake. "Hey," he murmured with a tired smile, voice rough from the long night. "Did you sleep at all?" "A little," she replied with a small smile. "You didn't?" He shrugged. "I wasn't tired. Just didn't want you to wake up alone." The simple words caught in her chest. Later, as the light grew stronger, they shared coffee in the kitchen. The heaviness between them had lifted. It was just two people, calm, honest, breathing after the storm. Eliza turned her cup slowly in her hands. "Last night was a lot." Gabriel nodded. "Yeah." Then he looked up, eyes warm but steady. "But I'm glad you called me." "I meant what I said, Eliza. I'm not going anywhere." She looked at him for a long time before whispering, "You don't have to do this." "Do what?" "Stay!" He smiled faintly, tilting his head. "Too late. I already am." Silence stretched between them, filled only by breath and heartbeat. Then Gabriel spoke again, quietly as though afraid to disturb the fragile peace they'd found. "I think I'm falling for you." Eliza froze. She had heard many words of affection before, honeyed promises that had turned to chains. But this was different. There was no possession in his tone, only truth. She exhaled softly. "Me too, and that scares me." Gabriel's smile deepened, gentle and slow. "Then we'll be scared together." A few days later, Eliza began therapy, part of a mental wellness program supported by Reed Hospitality. Every Wednesday morning, she sat in a pale green room, speaking of sleepless nights, unseen bruises, and the quiet strength of the man who was teaching her that safety was real. Gabriel never asked for details. He simply texted each morning, "Good luck today." And when her session ended, he would be waiting in the lobby, no questions, no advice, just a warm cup of coffee held out in silence. He never tried to step inside her mind. He simply stood outside, waiting, ready if she ever wanted to open the door. That quiet patience made it easier for her to breathe. One weekend afternoon, they walked along the Thames. The air was cool with river mist, but the spring sun had begun to warm the stones beneath their feet. The city hummed faintly in the distance. Here, there was only the soft rhythm of their steps and the lapping of water. "When I was a kid," Eliza said, voice as light as the breeze, "my mom used to take me to a cafe every Sunday. A small place filled with books and plants. She said one day I'd have my own." Gabriel smiled. "Sounds perfect. What would you call it?" She thought for a moment. "Maybe Second Cup." "Why?" "Because everyone deserves a second cup and a second chance." He chuckled quietly, a flicker of warmth in his eyes. "That's very you." Eliza looked out over the water, her lips curving slightly. "I've been saving. Not much, but maybe one day." Gabriel slowed his steps beside her, his tone low, steady, like a promise that didn't need ceremony. "Then one day we'll make it real." She turned to look at him. In the golden reflection of sunset on the river, his face softened. No trace of power, no hint of distance. Just a man smiling with quiet faith that beautiful things could begin again. That night, back in her apartment, Eliza opened her laptop and created a new document, Second Cup Concept Draft. The first words appeared on the blank screen, imperfect but hopeful. A message lit up her phone. "Gabriel, made it home safe?" Eliza, "Yes, working on something." Gabriel, "Good. Keep building your world. I'll be right beside it." Eliza touched the glowing screen, her fingers lingering over his words. Outside, the city lights began to bloom across the skyline. And for the first time in years, she realized she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was truly living. 2 months passed. Spring crept into every window of the Reed Grand Hotel. Lavender pots blooming purple on the balconies, morning coffee cups clinking alongside colleagues' laughter. Eliza walked through the lobby with steady steps, hair neatly tied, eyes clear and bright. No one looked at her as the woman who was once afraid anymore. They saw a sharp marketing strategist, the one who had just helped the Reed Grand brand win the quarter's Most Creative Campaign Award. Bridget still teased, "If Mr. Reed doesn't marry you, I'm filing a petition to keep you in the company forever." Kenji just chuckled, lifting his coffee mug. "She's already the soul of this place." Eliza smiled, though something inside her still felt quietly strange. That rare, simple sense of normalcy she once thought she'd never have again. No fear of eyes watching, no fear of footsteps in the hallway. Only work, laughter, and the familiar morning messages. "Gabriel, breakfast yet? Or should I bribe the cafeteria again?" Eliza, "Already had coffee, no bribes needed." Gabriel, "Disappointing. I had croissants prepared as a weapon." That evening, when she returned to her apartment, the kitchen light was already on. Gabriel stood by the dining table, sleeves rolled up, shirt neatly folded, surrounded by papers, charts, and project binders. "Gabriel?" she called softly, surprised. He turned, smiling under the warm light. "Perfect timing. I was just about to show you something." On the table lay a stack of documents with the Reed Ventures logo, the investment branch of his group. Right on the first page, bold letters made her freeze. Project, Second Cup, a community cafe concept. Founder, Eliza Rodriguez. She stared at him, lips parted, speechless. He pulled a chair and gestured for her to sit. "2 months ago, you told me about your dream, a cafe filled with books and sunlight. I listened. Then, I built the numbers." He opened the plan. The first pages featured a detailed layout, including reading corners, open workspaces, a coffee counter by the window, and a small section dedicated to women rebuilding their lives. Every detail she had ever mentioned, even those she'd said half-jokingly during their riverside walks, was there, drawn and costed. Location, Chelsea. Building lease, ready. Interior, minimal warm tones. You'd run creative and operations. We'll handle finance and logistics. He looked at her, smiling softly but confidently. "It's not charity. It's a partnership." Eliza sat in silence for a long moment. Her fingers touched the paper, trembling slightly. "Gabriel?" Her voice cracked. "This is too much." He shook his head gently. "No, this is exactly enough. You built a vision out of survival. All I did was give it a roof." Tears welled in her eyes. She bowed her head, whispering, "I don't know how to thank you." He smiled, quietly, firmly. "By making it real. No grand speeches. Just the two of them, in a small kitchen bathed in golden light, surrounded by sketches, papers, and the faint scent of freshly brewed coffee." She looked around and suddenly laughed through her tears. "I was supposed to be the marketer, and now I'm the brand." Gabriel chuckled. "You're more than that. You're the story." They sat close together on the wooden floor, going through each section of the plan. Eliza pointed at the part labeled Community Outreach, where Gabriel had written, "Workshops for women rebuilding their lives." "Did you write this?" she asked. "Of course," he replied. "It's what you've been doing all along. Rebuilding. Why not help others do the same?" She looked up at him. In that moment, every fear, every wall she'd built melted away. All that remained was gratitude, admiration, and a love quietly forming. Not because he had saved her, but because he had believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. "Gabriel," she whispered, "I don't think anyone's ever believed in me this way." He reached out, his voice low. "Then I'll be the first, but not the last." The moment stretched, as long as a breath, as brief as a heartbeat. Light shimmered across their eyes, across the unfinished plans, across two smiles that no longer feared tomorrow. Gabriel leaned forward and kissed her. This time the kiss was different, deeper, steadier, no longer the fragile promise born out of fear. It was an affirmation that they had crossed the dark. What had begun between them was no longer rescue, but the building of something real. When they finally pulled apart, Eliza rested her forehead on his shoulder, their breaths mingling. "Is this really happening?" she asked, her voice trembling but smiling. Gabriel tightened his hand around hers. It is. Tomorrow we start building. She looked down at the papers scattered across the floor, the word second cup glowing under the warm light. A dream once intangible now had a blueprint, a partner, a heartbeat. Outside, spring rain began to fall softly, mixing with the scent of coffee in the air. Eliza looked up at him and whispered, "For the first time in years, I can see tomorrow." Gabriel smiled, his eyes gentle. "Then let's make tomorrow beautiful." 7 months had passed. London had changed seasons. The sky brightened earlier now, and the trees along the Thames wore fresh green. Eliza Rodriguez was no longer the woman who feared the sound of footsteps behind her. She was now the young marketing director of Reed Grand Group, leading the campaign, "The Second Cup, Stories Brewed Here." The cafe she had once dreamed of was finally taking shape, her creation, her second chance. She didn't know that somewhere in the dark, he was still watching. Every step she took, every smile she gave, every time her hand brushed Gabriel's in public, someone saw it all. Friday night. Rain fell lightly. The underground parking lot was almost empty, the sound of raindrops echoing across the concrete. Eliza clutched her purse and pressed the key fob. A soft click echoed through the still air. Then a voice came from behind a pillar. "Eliza!" She froze at that voice, too familiar. It turned every cell in her body to ice. Slowly she turned around. Marcus. He looked thinner, gaunt, with a hollow face and an uneven beard covering his jaw. The cheap, wrinkled suit hung loosely from his frame. His eyes were sunken but burned with the same madness that once convinced him he owned her. Rain dripped from the ceiling, tracing cold silver lines down the gray floor. The whole space seemed to hold its breath. "Marcus!" Eliza stepped back, her voice trembling. "You're not supposed to be here." He laughed, a sharp, broken sound. "I've been here all along, watching you, laughing, smiling, living your perfect little life." Eliza tightened her grip on her purse, keeping her tone steady. "You should leave before security." "Security?" he snarled, cutting her off, stepping closer. "You think your rich boyfriend and his guards can protect you forever?" "You ruined me, Eliza. You destroyed everything." She lifted her chin. For the first time in years, she didn't look away. "No, Marcus. You did that yourself." The words struck him like a match to gasoline. He lunged forward, grabbing her arm hard enough to bruise. Eliza's pulse surged, but she didn't panic. Her fingers brushed the side of her phone. 3 quick presses on the power button. Emergency alert activated. A silent signal went out to Gabriel, Patricia, head of security, and the local police. "Let me go!" she shouted, twisting sharply, just as Gabriel had taught her. A wrist lock, pivot of the hip, breaks the hold. Marcus stumbled back, shocked by her strength. "Still pretending to be strong, huh?" he hissed, charging again. Eliza sidestepped, shoved his shoulder, sending him crashing into the hood of a nearby car. The clang of metal rang through the garage. "Stay away from me!" she yelled, backing toward the elevator. But he rose again, eyes red, voice feral. "You think he loves you? He's just using you like everyone else. You belong to me, Eliza." "Belong?" she spat, tears mixing with her ragged breaths. "I don't belong to anyone anymore." He roared, lunging once more, his hand closing around her throat, slamming her against the car. The scent of sweat, tobacco, and old fear engulfed her. Ghosts of the past closing in. Eliza fought back, driving her knee into his stomach. He groaned, loosening his grip. She broke free, sprinting toward the elevator, just as the door slid open. White light flooded the concrete, and then Gabriel's voice, low, cold, like steel cutting through the storm. "Get away from her!" The moment froze. Gabriel stepped forward first, followed by Patricia and 2 officers. Blue and red light from the patrol car flashed against the walls, dancing across Marcus's face, once smug, now twisted with rage and ruin. "Sir, put your hands where we can see them," one officer shouted. Marcus spun, desperate. "She's lying! She ruined my life! She—" Gabriel stepped between them, his tone deadly calm. "You did this to yourself, and it ends tonight." The officers closed in. The sharp click of handcuffs echoed through the silence. Marcus struggled, screaming, She's mine! You can't take her! A shove. He was forced to the ground, the flashing lights reflecting in the puddles, blue, red, white, blurring with rain and tears. Eliza stood frozen, trembling, breath uneven. Gabriel turned to her, his hands firm on her shoulders. It's over, he said softly, his voice the first warmth after a long, cold storm. He can't hurt you anymore. She looked up at him, eyes wet, lips quivering. You came. Gabriel tightened his grip, his gaze steady. Always. As the police dragged Marcus away, his footsteps scraped against the wet concrete, echoing through the hollow garage. Eliza watched, not in fear but in quiet release, as though she had just sealed the final door of hell. Gabriel slipped his coat around her shoulders and led her toward the elevator. Inside the golden light of the cabin, Eliza leaned against his chest, tears finally breaking free. He said nothing. He just held her, solid, real, safe. Outside, police lights flashed against the glass, blue, red, white, the last pulse of a nightmare fading into rain. The rain fell all night. By the time Gabriel brought Eliza back to her apartment, the storm had softened to a mist. She still trembled, hands clasped together. He opened the door, guiding her in with quiet steadiness. Sit down, he said gently. You're safe now. Later, when the city had gone still, Gabriel remained. He brewed chamomile tea, placed it in front of her, and sat nearby. Not speaking, not consoling, just there. Eliza leaned back on the sofa, watching the rain slide down the window. The city lights shimmered in her tear-streaked eyes. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. I want to stop being afraid. Gabriel looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, Then let's start living. And in that fragile silence, the rain seemed to soften. Eliza turned toward him and, for the first time, found in his eyes what she had stopped believing in, peace. They fell asleep on the sofa, wrapped in each other's arms. Not out of passion, but out of trust. Something delicate, yet worth more than every promise ever made. Outside, the rain kept falling, but inside that small apartment, for the first time in years, fear had finally stepped aside. A few months later, spring had returned to London. Cherry trees along Kensington Avenue bloomed white against the sky, their petals carried by soft breezes and birdsong. On the morning paper, the headline was brief. Businessman Marcus Hale sentenced to 15 years for assault and stalking. Eliza folded the paper, her hands trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from relief. At last, the past had its period. He was no longer the shadow lurking behind every step. He was only a memory now, locked away within four cold walls. Eliza was no longer just the marketing director of Reed Grand. She was now also the founder of Haven Cafe, a dream once sketched on paper, now made real in the heart of London. A gleaming brass sign hung above the door, engraved with one word, Haven. Inside, warm light spilled across polished wooden tables, the scent of roasted coffee mingling with the sound of laughter. Most of the staff, women who had once escaped abusive marriages, worked with steady hands and genuine smiles. Eliza walked through the cafe, her fingers brushing the newly varnished counter, her heart swelling with pride. Haven wasn't just a cafe. It was a refuge, a place where those who had lost their faith could begin again. All profits were donated to the Phoenix Fund, which supports women rebuilding their lives after experiencing abuse. Gabriel was the investor, yet at every press conference he stood behind her. This is her story, he always said. I'm just the background. That morning was the grand opening. The courtyard outside overflowed with reporters, friends, staff, and guests. Eliza stepped onto the small wooden stage, microphone trembling slightly in her hand. The wind lifted a few strands of hair. Sunlight fell across her face. No longer the frightened woman of a distant night, but someone who stood tall in her own light. She took a deep breath, then began. A year ago, I thought my life was over. I thought safety was something I'd never have again. But today, standing here, I realize safety isn't just about being protected. It's about being believed, being seen, and being given a chance to start again. Applause broke out. She smiled, her voice steady now. For everyone who thought they'd never be safe again, this place is for you. At the back of the crowd, Gabriel Reed watched quietly. He didn't step onto the stage, only stood there, holding a bouquet of white lilies, his gaze warm as early spring. He had met her in the rain when her world was nothing but fear and darkness. And now she was shining, not because someone saved her, but because someone believed she could save herself. When Eliza finished her speech, Gabriel walked up. Without a word, he handed her the bouquet. White lilies, symbols of new beginnings. "I thought you'd be hiding in the back row," she said softly, her smile trembling. "I was," Gabriel replied, "but you still found me." Their laughter mingled with the soft music and the hum of conversation. People raised their cups. The aroma of coffee drifted through the air, warm and gentle, just like the name Haven. Later that afternoon, after the crowd had gone, Eliza sat alone in the quiet cafe. Sunset light poured through the windows, spilling across the words painted on the wall. "Home is where healing begins." Gabriel walked over, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Busy day," he said. She looked up, her smile radiant. "The best kind." He sat beside her, glancing around the space. "You built this." She shook her head. "We did." He smiled, his eyes resting on the golden light reflecting in hers. "Remember that night?" he said quietly. She nodded, her voice soft as spring wind. "The night I hid in your car?" Gabriel's fingers brushed hers, his smile tilted. "No," he said. "The night you found your future." Outside, spring rain began to fall. Light, clear, and calm. The doors of Haven stood open, spilling gentle warmth into the street, the scent of fresh coffee, the quiet sound of hope taking root. And just like that, after all the storms, spring had truly come.